Let me actually look through my notes and see if there's anything that could fit here.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, we were just talking about before we started the record that we didn't really know what we were going to talk about at the beginning of this episode. A pretty good episode,
yeah.
I think.
I mean, we could talk about Star Wars Episode 1 because there's a
Oh
lot of like
yeah,
underwater
yeah.
cities in
That's a good
this.
idea. Yeah, because you texted me that this. I mean, you didn't say this. You said big gooberfish,
I did
but
say
what
big
I
gooberfish.
because I've known you for many years. I've known you for most of my life. I knew that what that meant was the parts of this where you see big fish underwater reminded me of the
Yeah.
bongo scene from Star Wars Episode One,
I mean,
which I did think.
it started with when they went to like the city underwater. Is I was just like, oh, it's Oto Gunga kind of. I
Yeah,
mean, I guess this came out before Star Wars Episode 1, but and then yeah, the like kind of they get attacked by the sort of like eel fish monster. The other thing that that monster in particular made me think of was the game Subnautica, which is very good, but
I've played a little bit of that. Yeah,
of like the sort of like the big monsters from that you're kind of
I almost texted you because I watched that episode a little earlier in the day than you, I think, and I almost texted you. There's always a bigger fish. Actually,
yes, it does
when I
look
saw that
more
scene.
like the bigger fish from like that scene is like what it actually looks like is kind of like the one that eats the one that's eating them, but
You know, it's really interesting. I'm not really like thought about this before, but I do think that there's some like truth in it. So the Star Wars prequel aesthetic was, I think, at the time, like generally people did not care for it, and I would say that like I like those movies, but I understand not caring for it in terms of like that it's overly digital, like especially because like with the two later prequels, like you're working with digital film, and so like I don't know if
sure.
I mentioned this to you. So 2 years ago, I saw Star Wars Episode One in theaters for its 25th anniversary, and then last year I saw Star Wars Episode Three in theaters for its 20th anniversary. Now, someone has dropped the ball where I was not able to see Star Wars Episode 2 in theaters for its whateverth
Yeah,
anniversary.
yeah.
So hopefully that will be rectified maybe in like couple years I can see that for its 25th or something like that. But anyway, Star Wars Episode 1, I think you and I both agree the best one of those movies.
Oh, really? I always thought you were a big fan of Episode 3.
No. I mean, I like all three of them in their own ways, but
Yeah.
Episode 1 I think is like definitely my favorite. Like,
Yeah. How much of
but
that do you think that is part of the like nostalgia factor of just the like it was sort of the perfect right, you were kind of at the perfect age for a movie like that at that time.
Man, we
That's
should have
just
talked
like
about this last episode because I could go on and on about this. And this episode of
yeah, we are
Star
actually
Trek
this
is
is going to
actually
be like a good
good.
one to talk about. Yeah. But
But I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it. I do think there's some nostalgia to it, but also that movie just has like the most interesting set pieces. It doesn't have Hayden Christensen in it. I really like all the weird politics stuff in that.
sure.
I like the really kind of like oblique way that like I like what he's doing there with just sort of like you don't really think that like this would be the thing that would make all this happen, which is like obviously like that's what a lot of people don't like about that movie, but I think that that is really in hindsight like kind of a brilliant way to like make the story start is to be like it started like with this weird kind of like boring thing that like, no one could be bothered to pay attention to, and like
Yeah.
but it's like that is kind of the way that stuff
And
goes,
that's
you know,
how
like
like dictators rise
yeah,
to power, yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I love that, and Darth Maul's in that one. I like that movie a lot. I still think that movie is like very very good. Whereas I would say the other two of them, I think are both like interesting movies, and I like them, but like they got some issues, you
Sure.
know.
Yeah, yeah.
But to what I was saying was that like I rewatched those two movies, and episode one is still shot on film and it still looks great, I think, basically. And then episode three and two are both shot on digital, and you can just see the data loss there, where you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh yeah, these can't be in as detail. They're not as crisp, and like they never will be able to be as crisp, which is like kind of a shame. You
Yeah.
know?
Which is partially like
Yeah,
the limitations of right, like that was kind of that time period is that like we were starting to use the
yes.
technology, but it wasn't as advanced as it is now. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think that like those movies are not really given their due in terms of like the way that they pushed film technology forward. I would say arguably sometimes to the detriment of film technology,
Sure.
unfortunately.
Yeah, because I think episode 2 in particular is the one, right, where you like see the behind the screen shot of like it's just people like sitting on a green box in a green soundstage and like somebody holding up a thing on a stick, and like that's
Yeah.
the acting.
But also, like, it's like, even though, like, I think that they are hamstrung by like the earliness of the technology, it's like you could also look at that as like Lucas basically insisting that if you want to show Star Wars, you have to get digital projectors into these theaters. It's like that did democratize film in a lot of ways, because like it is easier, it is cheaper to shoot on digital and stuff, you know. So like I don't know, like they're really interesting objects in like film history, but all that to say that like obviously I get like the aesthetic of that. I think especially in like 2 and 3, some people really didn't like it at the time, and I think that those movies, generally speaking, even though they made a lot of money, like people who were like adults when they came out were like, these are bad. A lot of people anyway. And then I think they've been reclaimed somewhat. But like it's interesting because I think only now, in the last few years, are you starting to see modern movies that feel like they are really inspired by the Star Wars prequels aesthetically. Like for example, I would say Ant-Man and the Wasp, or not Ant-Man, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Not a good movie, but like a movie where I was watching and I was being like, this looks like the Star Wars prequels, like in a way that I feel like is probably pretty intentional. And I think though that I'll have to say that there have been a couple of moments watching Voyager in particular where I'm like, this is kind of doing Star Wars prequel prior to Star Wars. Like
Mm-hmm.
obviously I know we've joked about like this is not really a style thing, but like we've joked about how like the pilot to Voyager has like basically a Star Wars style crawl that is like
Right.
kind of like boring and arcane and archaic as like the episode 1 crawl.
Sure.
Let's see if I can find it actually now, because I want to remind myself.
Oh, the Voyager one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's explaining like the Maquis and like the
Yeah. Unhappy with a new treaty, Federation colonists along the Cardassian border. It's like they say a new treaty.
if
like
you,
they say
if
it
you
like,
use the phrase treaty in the first sentence
Yeah.
of your yeah.
Happy with the new treaty, Federation colonists along the Cardassian border have banded together. Calling themselves the Maquis, they continue to fight the Cardassians. Some consider them heroes, but to the governments of the Federation and Cardassia, they are outlaws. And it's just like, which is such a funny when we're just sort of like, it's almost like you're trying to get people who have not watched previous Star Trek to turn it off. It's like what that crawl appears to be doing, you know?
Sure.
But then like there's other like stylist, like a lot of the CG in this. I mean, oddly, it kind of is reminiscent of episode 2 and 3 in that like it can never be quite reclaimed in like a better format because the show was shot on early digital, but also like it has this kind of like weird, kind of very like a lot of curved line Art Deco stuff. But even like the costuming, it's like do you remember when we watched like Drive, like the one where they kind of do the
Delta
race
Flyer,
through space?
like yeah,
Like that one, that's such a Star Wars prequel coded
like pod race type
thing.
of thing.
And that actually might have, now that I'm thinking about it, that episode might have actually come out after. Let me look. Actually, that might have come out after Star Wars Episode 1.
I guess maybe. Yeah, I guess probably after episode 1, right? Because episode.
Yeah, it did. It came out the year after. So.
Well, so then I guess
maybe
this would this have 2 then?
This is what's let's see. 30 days.
It's got the Delta Flyer in it, so.
Yeah, but this episode came out before that though. This episode came out in 1998, so this is before.
Okay.
This is before episode 1. So, anyway,
yeah,
just an interesting little tie-in. I think that there's a lot of weird stuff about Voyager that is like weirdly Star Wars prequel coded, I think. So.
That's fair.
Hi everybody, welcome to Out of Contreks, a show where two guys who have seen part of Star Trek try to watch all of it in no particular order. I'm Ryan Howard.
And I'm Brady Jungle.
And today we're talking about 30 Days, which is Voyager Season 5, Episode 9, written by Kenneth Biller and Scott Miller, directed by Winrich Colby, and the memory alpha synopsis is: Tom Paris is demoted to ensign and is sentenced to 30 days in the brig for disobeying orders. While serving time in the brig, Tom writes a letter to his father about the events that led to his demotion. Winrich Colby, we've seen a lot of his work. I mean, he's directed 48 episodes of Star Trek, so
Oh wow.
I'm sure
Okay.
there's still a lot that we haven't watched. But he also
Yeah.
directed Drive. He directed Caretakers. Maybe he's like a big part. He likes this prequel style stuff. Maybe possibly. I
Oh,
don't know.
maybe yeah. That's kind of his aesthetic.
Um, what else has he directed that we've seen? He directed Blood Oath. He directed Our Man Bashir.
Oh wow. He did all the
He's
fun
got some
ones.
good ones under. Yeah, for sure. Oh, he directed Darmok.
Wow.
He's
okay.
a good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he directed. We haven't watched this episode, but he directed All Good Things. Like so,
Wow.
they really
okay.
relied on him a lot.
Yeah. So big.
And he directed
Okay.
one episode of Enterprise, Silent Enemy, which I don't think we have watched yet. But anyway, I really enjoyed this episode. I think honestly, my biggest criticism of this episode is that I think that it generally does a good job at kind of allowing you to understand the motivations of the people involved, of everyone involved, and you kind of understand why Janeway sort of feels like she has to do what she does at the end of the episode. But I think that I am even more, almost 30 years on from this episode than at the time. It's like I am so fully on Tom Paris's side by the end of the episode that I think that this is another episode that kind of weirdly serves to undermine Janeway a little bit in the.
Really? See, and I guess maybe we should wait till the end to get into this because I came down slightly more on Janeway's side. I think in this specific case.
Well, this is great. We can talk about it then. Yeah, why don't we just work our way through?
Yeah, we'll go through because the story I think is straightforward enough that we can kind of get through it, and then yeah, I think we'll get into the philosophy of it. I think later on, but it starts out with this framing device of the first thing you see is that Tom Paris is demoted and is sentenced to 30 days in solitary confinement, and then they take him into the brig and lock him up behind this force field, and then he pulls out a pad and starts writing this letter to his father, who's a Starfleet admiral, and it starts out with just I'm in jail again, but I wanted to explain to you why, because it's probably not what you think. And they kind of we started talking about this I think in our last episode, which was a bad example of and I don't know if you could call this in media res or not. This I think it's more of a
Well, no, it definitely is because the
device.
first thing that happens is that she demotes him.
Right, which is also the last scene of the episode.
Yeah, so that is in media res for certain. And then obviously then they tell it in this very kind of elliptical way where you're cutting back and forth between the present and and the past.
Yeah, but I think it works. I think it works very well in this episode.
I do too,
because it's part of the story that they're telling is not just this is the thing that happened, but also it's using it also I did write down of sort of all of the particularly recent Star Trek episodes that will just sort of but I guess even going back to we've had other ones with the one with Riker and that of all these Star Trek episodes that get into people with parent issues. I think this one also handles it, does a good job of writing it in a way that sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's this thing where it's just because they keep going back to Tom Paris in the brig sort of doing what he's doing, and other kind of characters from the show will briefly come and talk to him for a little while. And there's one where Harry Kim comes and talks to him, and he sort of explains I'm writing this letter to my dad, and he's obviously I don't think my dad will ever actually get it, but I just kind of had this I felt like I had to explain it to him because I don't want it. And he starts to say I didn't want him to think, and kind of trails off because again he kind of logically knows that he's not actually doing this to explain it to his dad, but still kind of has that that impulse is so kind of deep in him and so overpowering that he's I'm feeling I'm being judged or I'm in trouble and I need to explain myself, and I don't want like I need to do something about this, and I feel like they play that element of it out very well with, and that all kind of happens in like the framing device. Like it's not really done in the story, but I think it's an important part of like what this episode is about.
Yeah, and you know, McNeil does a good job with it too, I think.
Yeah. He also does a fun, which again, I was kind of thinking of just the, like, I feel like if they had leaned more into this element of the character, maybe I would have not necessarily liked Tom Paris more, but like found like it would have been a better character because one of the first things he does is like, you know, he's like just gets locked up in solitary and he's kind of pacing around with nothing to do, and then he's like, I'll start like doing push-ups, and so he's like 1, 2, and then like someone walks in and he kind of like looks up and sees someone walk in and he's like 98, 99. And
yeah,
I was like, that's the kind of, I don't know, there was something about that, like I think if you leaned more into like, I think they try to make him too much of the like, oh, he's like a bad boy who doesn't play by the rules but is actually a good guy, and if you like made him a little bit more on the side of like that he's actually kind of a jerk, I don't know.
yeah. I mean,
But
I texted you while I was watching this, and I was like, it is interesting because I think that regardless of like where you land on whether he was justified or not, like this episode is still certainly trying to get you to identify with him.
yes,
Which is for me like and I think this is honestly one of the reasons why I think that this episode, the media res works even better for me, is that like I am predisposed to not like Tom Paris, and so like if I see that he's getting demoted, I'm sort of like, oh, what did he do? And I think that it's like that is the good thing about when you can use a media as well, is that like the whole episode you are trying to think about. It's like in the last episode we talked about, like I am not thinking about
right,
what is going to happen to Picard to get him. Like it's basically I'm like forgetting about it, and then like every 10 minutes it's like, oh.
Yeah,
it cuts back to him on the ground. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that's gonna happen later. Yeah. Like, whereas in this one, I'm sort of like, you're watching the whole thing, being like, what's he going to do?
Yeah, because it starts out playing out like just kind of a normal Star Trek story. It's just like, oh, like there's this thing on the planet, and we're investigating it, and like trying to like save the shuttle, and yeah.
And then I think as you go through the episode, not only are you trying to figure out what's he going to do, you start to be like, oh, well, actually, it seems like he kind of has the correct, if not actions, like the correct attitude about this, you know? And so it's like, how is this going to work out? You know, and I think for me, like it probably is extra effective because I'm just kind of generally predisposed to be like, well, he got demoted, like, oh, good, he should be demoted he probably got demoted for a good reason. Harry should be independent, not him, you know? Sure. And I think that one of the few missteps of this episode is that like in the beginning of the episode, you have Tom behaving like so uncharismatically because they have like this Captain Proton. The genesis of this is that like he and Harry are doing a Captain Proton thing, and they get called to the bridge for the episode to start, basically.
Right.
And like during this scene, though, basically like Harry is like, I have a crush on like one of the twins.
Yes,
these twins
and
that
a bondage
out
kink
with,
that I didn't need to know about.
But the other twin likes me, and then Tom Paris is like, whatever, if one of the twins likes you, just go with that one. And it's like just basically being like, twins are the same, like
they're twins, what's the difference? Yeah, like,
which I think bothered me extra because I have brothers who are twins.
I guess that's fair, as someone who is
but still
very familiar with the
it's like I have you know, like at my theater company I'm with, like I have some good friends who are twins, and they're so different, and I'm just like, what a rude thing to say.
Yeah, that's fair. So they find this, it's not really a planet because it's like they say it's a ocean in space. Like it's all water. That's sort of, they're like, there's some sort of technology in the middle that's making this force field that's holding it all into like a sphere, and it's just like, it's just an ocean. And then there are these people that live there that kind of are like, yeah, we've like built city, like we started out as like kind of nomads going through space, and then we found this ocean and made it our home. So we have these like underwater cities, and then our ships that are both like submarines and spaceships that can fly out and that kind of thing. And so they're a sort of contingent from these people comes and is on Voyager, and they're talking to them and meeting with them. And the leader, I don't know what his name is, but he's like a politician of some sort, who's like a diplomat type of person, who's kind of like explaining all of this to them. And then there's also a scientist, I assume, named Riga.
Yeah, he's a scientist.
Yeah, who's like,
he's played by Willie Garson, who is just like a if you look up what he really looks like, and I recognized him even in this. You've seen him in like 10 million things. He's most famous, I think, for being a recurring character on several seasons of Sex and the City, which I have not seen. But he's just like,
okay,
he's dead. He's dead now, but he's just a real working actor. If you look at a picture of him, you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that guy in like 80 things. And he's really good. I think
he is very.
I like the other guy too. Actually, I like both of the. I should look up the Burkus, that guy's name, Benjamin Livingston. I think they're both. I like both of them. I think that's one of the reasons why this episode works, is that like they're both really good at doing the thing that they're doing, which is like they're both doing a very different thing. But like
yes, and again, going back to like they kind of like make it clear what their character's motivation is the whole time, in a way that tells the story well, I think. But yeah, and so he's like very concerned because he's like, we've been studying the oceans and like we're having this sort of ecological problem where like the oceans are losing water because like the containment field is kind of like weakening, and we need to investigate why, but we don't have the kind of capabilities to go to the center of the ocean where like all of this is coming from. And Tom Paris is like, oh, this will be great, like we can, the Delta Flyer, we can like increase the shields or whatever, and it can definitely handle that. So we can go and help these people. And like he kind of talks about how like he growing up was always really into boats. Right? Like
he and Cisco could
very like
have a nice chat,
like sailing ships and like Moby Dick and stories about like people on boats and all of that.
And 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess as part of that kind of also talks about like, but like he always wanted to be like a sailor, but because his dad was a Starfleet admiral, like he had to go into Starfleet. So they go down. It's him and Riga and Seven of Nine. And is Harry there too? I think Harry goes too.
Yeah, because they say he's the first mate. And,
oh sure.
And he's like, what? And he's like, the boat talk or whatever.
Right.
Jerry Ryan is not in this episode that much, but she rocks in it as usual. Like, there's just a couple of different like. She gets to like say some stuff in her kind of like Seven sarcastic mode.
Right,
this,
like I'm like judging the hell out of Tom Paris right now, but just saying like something kind of short, terse. Yeah,
she's so good. She's the best.
Yeah, and so they go down and they find this, like there's this reactor that is running the containment field, but it's hundreds of thousands of years old, and it's kind of starting to break down, or like it's like being overworked. So that's when they get attacked by an Orty, a big fish monster.
They get attacked by like a big whatever, a goober fish.
Yeah. So there's kind of this, and again, it's one of those where like this is when you're still kind of wondering like, what did Tom Paris do? And like there's this whole like they're having to decide like, oh, do we like run away and go back to this surface? And he's like, no, we can, like, we're all the way down here, this is our only chance, we have to keep scanning this thing so we can figure out what's going on. And so they kind of like end up staying down there, but they're able to, like, Seven of Nine is able to sort of like shoot at the fish and scare it away, and they get all the data and they come back up to the surface. I feel like I'm kind of rushing through this, but
this is, I mean, I would say like this is one of the more I've like thought about this episode, the more I like it, and the more I could actually see popping this into my 100 episodes, because like one of the many things I like about this episode is that like this is an episode that you could make an entire show about this, and I like that when Star Trek does that kind of thing, where you're like, if you were like, all right, here's the premise of our television show. Like, it's in space, and there's, like, a planet that is, like, just water, and, like, some ancient aliens that we don't know, like, it's, like... And they just kind of, like, run through all of that, like, because they just are talking about all these different things, and it's, like, it's just really...
Yeah, because even, when they kind of, like, are analyzing the data, Tom Paris is like, Yeah, so this actually started as like there was a planet that was like a mixture of land and water, and then for some reason they like pulled all the water off of it and sent it into space as this like floating ball.
Yeah, and it's like,
And
why?
they
I
never
don't know.
explain.
Like
Yeah, they never like
yeah,
follow. Like we don't know why they did that, and that's kind of
yeah.
like that's not actually a plot point in this, but it could be.
It does. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's like lazy or like it's just sort of like that's not what we're dealing with right now. You know,
Yeah,
like.
but it's a very cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. And so again, and so this all that takes I think a lot longer than I just spent talking about it. But the sort of crux of the episode happens like they come back and they're analyzing the data, and Tom Paris and Riga are kind of going through this, and they figure out that it's actually like their people have built these big, like they're strip mining the ocean for oxygen basically. Like they have these big oxygen extraction machines, and that's like putting too much stress on the ocean, which is then like too much for the reactor to like be able to deal with, and so that's why it's slowly losing power.
Well, wait. So I think maybe that's I misunderstood. But so I isn't it that like they're mining the ocean for mining?
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, I thought they were just getting oxygen out of it.
No, because it's like I think that they're basically like because we're doing this as well as pulling oxygen from the ocean. Like,
Oh, okay.
that is what's caught because it basically like the problem isn't that they live there because they want to keep living there. Like the problem is that they are like they have too.
They're taking too much.
They've gotten
out
too
of
much. They've gotten too much industrial. They've industrialized their occupation like too much.
Yeah.
I guess it's gonna say
Okay,
like
that makes
the
sense.
oxygen mining must be cut back or cease. Yeah, but it's like because they're not trying to like have them die. It's like what are they using the oxygen for? Because it's like I think they're using the oxygen like for the mining operations or something. Like because it has to do
I think
with
so, or like because part of the like thing is that they, like when they're sort of explaining this to the diplomat guy, like Janeway is like, we'll share our like replicator technology with you basically. So like they kind of offer them an alternative of like we can give you basically like a cleaner technology so that you can keep living here but not be damaging the oceans anymore. And he's basically like, well,
Burgess
that's gonna
is like, sure, yeah, well,
sure,
I'll make
yeah,
a note
we'll
of that.
submit it
Like,
to a subcommittee and like, yeah, but it's kind of like that's gonna be like a big, like that'll be very politically difficult to make happen because it's expensive and like we have to change things and yeah, and I think like they established sort of about his character again. I think in a good bit of like crafting the episode, there are points before that where like he is clearly the like his concerns are political.
mm-hmm.
Like there's a scene when they're trying to, like they've lost track with the submarine or whatever and they're trying to get it back, and Janeway and Voyager are just like, we have to like rescue our people, and he's like, what am I going to tell the council if this mission fails? And Janeway I think even calls out like, are you really like more concerned with your like political career than with like the lives of these four people down there? And they kind of like, I think there's a couple different times where like what his concerns are is like politics and success and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they explain this to him and he's kind of like, will think about it, and like clearly he's not going to do anything. And like you can see that Riga also is like sort of upset about this and is like trying to push for something to happen, but kind of has resigned himself to like, well, if they're not going to do anything. And then
Tom also is sort of like getting
he
this vibe
kind of
of,
like argues about it and has to be
know.
sort of like called out by Janeway of like, you can't argue with a visiting diplomats in front of me type of thing.
Do you remember I think about just because I think this is one of the first you like ever have like an experience with like the first time you've encountered like a trope in media, even if it wasn't like actually in hindsight like a very good version of it, but it's just the version that always kind of sticks in your head.
Yeah, sure.
Like it reminds me of in there's an Adventures in Odyssey episode where I believe it's the episode of Adventures in Odyssey, if you remember, when Jason invents some technology in the imagination station that can like make disabled people feel as if they are not disabled. Do you remember that episode?
I don't really know. Okay. Sure, I believe it. Sure.
There's a guy in a wheelchair, and he like, and so like Jason writes a program where like he can walk in the like where he can walk, you know, or that kind of a thing.
Okay.
Um, and Jack is like, you shouldn't do this because like it can be bad or whatever. And it's sort of like it's the kind of the message of the episode in like, you know, classic Adventures in Odyssey fashion is basically like God gave people disabilities for a reason, and so you should like
So
it's
you shouldn't try
not
to
it's
help
not
them.
good.
Sure.
But there is a scene in it though where Jason is being cautioned by Jack, and Jason says like, your concerns have been duly noted and filed, and Jack's like, meaning you haven't heard a word I've said, like, you know, and like
Yeah.
that's what I think about for like when I think about like this kind of a thing is like your concerns have like it's like that's
Yeah.
the vibe he's giving out is like your concerns have been duly noted and filed, you know,
Yeah.
is kind of what's going on with him.
And then like there's a scene where Paris is like kind of sitting on the holodeck feeling sad about what's going to happen, and Bolana Torres comes and talks to him and basically just kind of points out the like you finally like you found, I think she says you found like a cause, or you found something that's like important to you, and like that it's not just that he's like, it kind of started out as just like, oh, I've just always like liked boats, but like now I like actually kind of care about like the well-being of this planet and these people, and like I'm very upset that you can like see what's gonna happen and what they're gonna do to it. And he like decides that he is gonna actually do something about it, and so he goes and finds Riga, and they're just like, if we fully like destroy the mining rigs that we were kind of like telling them like, oh, we should shut these down or like convert them to clean energy essentially, like if we just like go and blow them up, then they'll have to, and that'll right like that'll kind of save the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so they steal the Delta Flyer and they go down and like to like try to blow these things up. And
Pretty good like tense scene of like Voyager like kind of being like, okay, like Janeway being like, let's time this out so that we can like basically hit their torpedo with our torpedo, and but like kind of thinking to herself that like she might need to decide to shoot down the Delta Flyer and kill Tom Paris and
right.
Riga, like
And like she, I don't think really like everyone else on the bridge is kind of like being like, are we really doing this? And she, it seems like, has like fully committed to just like, yep, he mutinied and like stole my shuttle, and so like he is like an enemy now, basically, and is obviously like not going to like kill him, but is sort
well,
of,
but she says at the end, she's like, I would have killed you if I had to do it. Like she's
yeah, goes like kind of very sort of hardline immediately of just the like, he like sort of disobeyed an order, because she even like then like communicates with him, and she's like, I'm ordering you like direct order to like come back, and he's like, just hangs up on her.
yeah.
And so yeah, and so like basically they have to like, in order to safely like shoot the mining refineries and blow them up, they have to like come up to a certain depth, but that's also like the same depth that then they'll be in range that Voyager can shoot them. And so they play out like the, you know, they're counting down and like getting there, and then they both fire at the same time, but yeah, Voyager like disables their missile and disables the shuttle and brings them, you know, like brings them back, and Tom Paris gets thrown in jail for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And at the end you kind of see more of that initial scene from the cold open where Tom is like, this is why I did it,
Yeah, and
like
this is the part where I do think like if we get into like the Janeway of it all, I think she is particularly harsh on him here, where because she basically is just like, I thought you changed, but you haven't, and like you're still just kind of like insubordinate for the sake of being insubordinate. And I think kind of missing the point of just like, no, in this case he was actually like doing the right thing, and
well, but
like
you don't
had a
think so,
reason
maybe
for
it
doing
sounds
it.
like it sounds
Well,
like maybe you don't agree with that.
I think I think it's one of those where like I guess I'm more on the side of like, I think he was doing the right thing, and also like Janeway was doing the right thing, because like ordinarily I'm as open to eco-terrorism as the next guy, Um, but I guess my thing with this is that like it isn't their planet, and like I think from Janeway's standpoint, I do understand the whole like it's not our place to sort of force upon these people. Like we've offered them kind of everything we can, and like we can't force them to like make the right decision for themselves because we like are leaving. Like it's not our ultimately like can only be our responsibility to a certain point, and then like
Yeah, that's
you can't kind of like take away these people's autonomy for what to do for their planet, even when you know what the right thing to do for them is, which is a very like right like Star Trek kind of deals with that sort of thing a lot.
yeah. I would say that to me though the difference is that well like yeah I mean as you said like I'm very open to the idea of eco-terrorism like I think that to me, it's like I think that this episode has only kind of become like more relevant because there is like an actual like global warming episode of Voyager, but it's like this episode this is basically about how like there's a looming crisis coming. The scientists are saying that it's coming, and then like the politicians are sort of like, well, I don't really want to do anything about this. I acknowledge this is a real thing. I'm just going to just kind of like
but that seems difficult.
Hopefully I'll be retired or dead by the time that it's an issue. Like is
sure.
Basically what Burkess's like statement is. And it's like, you know, she kind of invokes the Prime Directive, but it's like the Prime Directive is more about like
yeah, it's not really a Prime Directive thing.
Pre-warp civilizations, which these guys are not. And it's like
but I think there's still a degree of like how much do you interfere with another society?
Yeah, but it's like it's not like they're interfering with the determination of the whatever these guys are called people. Like they're interfering with like a totally inactive government. It's like if you ask most people in America right now, they don't like ICE, they don't like the genocide in Palestine or whatever,
right?
But if
yeah, but I think the difference is that we live
if
here.
Voyager came to Earth right now, like they'd send like freaking JD Vance up there, and it's like I don't want Janeway going to Tom Paris. Well, we have to respect what like America or what Earth wants because we talked to JD Vance. Like you know what I mean?
That's a fair point. Yeah. So like what like would most of the people that actually live on this planet?
Yeah, it's like what I would love. I would love Tom Paris to come down here and like blow up the White House or whatever. You know what? I mean,
sure.
Again, if anyone listens to this, I'm being facetious. I don't have any plans to blow the White House, but like I wouldn't want
the representatives of our government,
the representatives of like my corrupt government
planet.
to be the ones who are responsible for, which is what's happening in real life right now. But basically like taking this information that they have and that they know they should act on and deciding not to act on it. And it's like, I have no control over that. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I think that like it does, I think he does the right thing. And it's like, I do sort of understand why Janeway has to do this. Or like why she
I guess like
this.
Kind of the best situation would be a sort of like the thing that like I feel like Cisco will do sometimes or Pike will do sometimes of just the like, oh no, it's too bad I couldn't stop you.
Right. It's like, and Janeway doesn't really do that. It's like you don't
like this guy is acting like outside of our command, and like we're not responsible for this as like right, like Voyager obviously can't like commit an act of war by attacking this planet's oil refineries, but also you could have like sort of given Tom Paris the grace of just like, well, if you've decided to do the right thing, I'm going to have to like be sure to reprimand you afterwards. Yeah. But in a like sort of like, I know you did the right thing and I'm glad you did the right thing because I couldn't type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, Cisco is such a great example of this because I feel like there's so many, you know, even like in The Abandoned, which we watched recently.
Right.
Like,
yeah, that's kind
where
of
this is sort of him being like, look, I know what you're doing, and like I have to tell you to not do it, but like you're gonna do it anyway, and like I'll just say that I couldn't stop you or whatever. And or even in like I can't remember what the episode is, but the one where like Worf has to say like he has to choose between like doing the mission and saving Jadzia, where even in that one where Cisco is like kind of genuinely Cisco's mad. Like, you did the wrong thing and I can't. Yeah. You did the wrong thing, and that's going to affect your promotional status. And you can't go on missions with your wife anymore. But I get it. Like it's basically like what like. It's like,
I guess that's kind of like that would have been the. Again, like I like, I'm not saying that would have been a better episode, because I think this one actually like is told very well as
Yeah, I
what
do
happens
too.
because of it. But yeah, that would have been a better thing for like side for Janeway to take.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you just sort of like, I think especially because like also it's like not like the punishment she gives him is, it's pretty, it's not like a Cisco punishment where he's like, well, I'm going to like technically punish you. It's like
Right.
she
I mean,
gives
like,
him a real punishment. Like not only
yeah,
does she, not only like because she's like she is legitimately mad at him and thinks that he did the wrong thing. It's like
yeah,
because not only does she demote him, but she also basically puts him in solitary for like a month. Like
yeah. Which is like,
not
is
like in
that
like full
still
solitary,
considered
but it's like
humane
he
in the
doesn't like
future?
she doesn't even give him like a book to read or anything. It's
Yeah,
like
he's in a like like a small featureless room for a full month, which is
the only
wild.
conversations he gets are like he like gets to talk to like Neelix or the doctor for like 2 seconds when they come in to give him like medically necessary stuff. She allows
Yeah,
Harry to see him eventually. She does seemingly she does not allow his like long-term girlfriend to come see him, you know, like
yeah. I don't think she ever does. Yeah,
and it's just sort of like it's like it's not only is it making me again, it's just it's such a weird Clintonite thing, like as so much stuff in this show is where you're just sort of like it is the kind of like, well, we have to be like nice liberal people, but like we have to show that we're tough on crime, like is like that is the Clinton way,
I mean,
you know,
yeah,
like. And again, I think it's like a well written episode, but I do just sort of be like, yeah, man, like I'm pretty much always going to be on the side of the environmental terrorists. And it's like Tom Paris didn't kill anybody. Like what Tom Paris did is he tried to save a bunch of people's lives.
yeah.
And basically like he's reprimanded because like his boss was like, "Well, that's against the rules."
Because she
Like
was told not to. Yeah,
yeah, like and I am just sort of like I get it, but like Team Tom Paris in this one instance like it is my feeling.
yeah,
But I think it's well done in that like it does allow you to have, I think that like the moral kind of like conversation you're having in this episode is like a lot, it is a lot more nuanced than like something like Tuvix, which is also a good episode, but like which does end with like I think most people being like, well, they murdered a guy, like she murdered a guy. So yeah, it's a very good episode. I just think that like yeah, that would be my one thing is that like oh yeah, it's another instance of me being like, ugh, you're so like firm on like your moral rectitude, and your moral rectitude is just sort of like that you know best, kind of, you know what I
yeah.
mean? But yeah, but I not really even really a criticism because I like the episode. It's just an interesting thing where I think if you had to have me like go down like a really detailed like point like blow by blow like this is why I would like this is how I'm ranking all the captains, and this is like all the good and bad things the captains did, like this is
Mhm.
another example of me being like yeah, that's kind of a Janeway takes another L here in my opinion, you know.
Yeah, I think that's
But
it's a fair stance. I think. Yeah. So.
but yeah, a very good episode though overall, and yeah, I really did like this episode. I think it's really well done,
Yeah.
and all the more impressive that it is that it's
A
about
Tom
like
Paris episode.
one of my least favorite series regulars, you know, and who gives a good performance, and yeah, I mean like
Yeah, he does.
and I you know what else I like about what I do really like about this episode is that even though he gets in trouble and he has to accept his punishment, like he actually not only does he never admits to being wrong, and he is legit I think mad at Janeway for doing this to him the entire time, and I think that like
Yeah, and like less in the just like, oh, I'm like sullen because I got in trouble, and more the like, he still feels justified.
yeah,
He still is
he
like,
ends the episode. He's like, "I'm right, and she punished me for being right," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's true." And I think that like that is like
yeah,
a much less like kind of conciliatory way to end the episode, and I think that really helps the episode. And even like the other cast members aren't really like, "Oh yeah, you're right," like Janeway, she sucks. It's like Harry Kim especially is sort of like, "Yeah, I feel for you," but he kind of tries not to take a side. But then like even I think like at the end of the episode, like sort of like implicitly B'Elanna is like sort of she like has a little bit of fun at his expense by like saying that she, you know, she can order him around now because
oh, because she outranks him. Sure.
but she doesn't like say anything to him about, she's not like, oh, you shouldn't have done this. It's just sort of like, hey, I still love you anyway. It's like,
Yeah.
it seems like even she's sort of like, because she was one of the people kind of encouraging
yeah.
where she's sort of, it seems like she's sort of implicitly approving of what he did. And I like that a lot. I like, because, it's like being in a workplace sort of where you have to kind of, I think everyone's been in a workplace like that before where they're sort of like, well, we have to like, the boss is saying this, but like, I appreciate like if someone is being insubordinate for the right reason, like that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, I liked that a lot about it too. So in that way, I think that's another thing that kind of helps it is that like I do think that Janeway is wrong, but I think that the show at least sort of is open to the option that she's wrong, and I think that oftentimes a big flaw in the show is that like she's wrong, and then the show is like, and she's so right, like, and I'm like, oh, I don't
Sure.
know, like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think they really kind of worked to find a sort of like issue where they can be like, Janeway was doing what she had to because of her position, and Tom Paris was doing like the right thing, and both those things can be true. But
yeah, yep. But anyway, very good episode. Yeah, I mean, I remember liking this episode, but then like I think watching it again and like talking about it, especially like really kind of like bumped it up. I think there's like a lot of stuff going on in it, so very good job to all involved. But yeah, we come out every other week. So we're gonna be back in a couple weeks to talk about another Voyager episode. We're talking about Warlord, which is Voyager season 3, episode 10. In the meantime, you can follow us on Blue Sky at Contreks. You can email us at outofcontreks@gmail.com. You can visit our website at outofcontreks.podbean.com, or you can follow us on YouTube at Out of Contreks. Contreks is spelled Contreks. You can also check out the other shows on the Kaleidoscope Media, or the other show on the Kaleidoscope Media Podcast Network, which is a horror media podcast called Here's Johnny. So check those folks out, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
thanks, everyone. Bye.